So in almost every Assassin's Creed game, the protagonist, the character you play as, is an assassin. The only exceptions to this are Rogue, where you play as an assassin turned Templar, Assassin's Creed 3, where you play the first part as a Templar, Hathan Kenway, and the rest as an assassin, his son Connor, and Odyssey, where you don't play as an assassin nor a Templar, but instead you play as a mercenary. But one thing that I've always been thinking of is an Assassin's Creed game where you could choose to either be a Templar or an assassin. And Assassin's Creed Valhalla is going to have even more player-made choices, and not just short-term choices either. The choices that you will make will determine the outcome of your gameplay. Because of this, I think Valhalla could be a great opportunity to be an Assassin's Creed game where you can choose to either be an assassin or a Templar. Now, I have absolutely no reason to think that this will happen, but I would also be lying if I said that I didn't believe that the possibility was there. There can be many possible pros and cons if this were to be the case. The pros are that the player will be able to see things from both sides, like how they could in Assassin's Creed 3 and, to an extent, Rogue, and people will now get to choose whose side they can be aligned with. The people who believe that the assassins are the good guys can side with the assassins, whilst all the normal people side with the Templars. But there is also one possible con to this, and that is that the game will probably take longer than we think. It would either be that, or the game wouldn't be as good as we hoped because they had to rush it in order to put in both options. Or if we were lucky, they already started creating both of these options before they announced it, and in that case it wouldn't be a problem. But again, I have no reason to think that this will actually be the case in the game, but I do think it's an interesting idea and certainly a possible one. Because of this, here is how Avior could be able to side with either the Assassins or the Templars. So now's the part where I once again bring my own imagination to this video. So here's a fun scenario in the game's plot that could introduce the choice between the Templars and the Assassins. You and your fellow Vikings are raiding another monastery, but during the raid you somehow discover a precursor site that the monastery was on top of, like the cathedral in Lisbon, Portugal, in Assassin's Creed Rogue. Because you are just a Viking who knows absolutely nothing about the war between the Assassins or the Templars, who by the way at this time are still known as the Hidden Ones and the Order of the Ancients, you assume that this is merely a cellar of the monastery, and so you enter assuming that you might find some valuables inside. But once you enter, you are soon to realise that this is no basement or cellar. No, this is something mystical. You curiously wander down further and further into the temple, until you eventually reach the inner sanctum. In there, a vision of Odin himself appears to you. This isn't actually completely far off possibility, because it's possible that Odin is the man that you see in the trailer of the game, especially since a raven flies from his position, because ravens were known to be connected with Odin. So back to the scenario. A vision of Odin appears to you, and then Odin speaks to you about an ancient war between two ancient factions. He speaks to you about how both factions seek for peace, but they have very polarizing ideologies on how to achieve it. And he also mentions how they both seek pieces of Eden, and what both sides plan to do with them. But he says all of this in more or less a neutral way, so that he doesn't influence the player's choice-making. Eventually, after the vision of Odin tells you everything that you need to know, he vanishes. Avior returns up top, and by this time the raid is pretty much over, and the Vikings are preparing to leave. Because you, Avior, are the soldiers' chief, you feel the need to tell them of the vision you have had. Now, I'm not going to say that they don't believe you. Instead, I'm going to say that your Viking soldiers do believe you, because the Vikings were very superstitious, and to say something like this wouldn't be too out of the ordinary for them. And after telling them of your vision, you have to tell them that you have to leave temporarily to find one of these two factions. But you promise to return once you do. Later on you return to your village, and then you organize someone to run the village while you are away. Once done, you leave in search of either the Order of the Ancients or the Hidden Ones, depending on what the player chooses. You find one of these factions, and they are first very suspicious of you, but after you tell them what you have seen, and convince them that you speak the truth, they eventually invite you to join their faction. And that is the scenario on how the player could be able to choose if whether or not he is an assassin, or a hidden one, or if he is a Templar, or an ancient. I'd be glad to hear your opinion, and I will see you guys in the next video.